Let's talk about your job. We're going to go on a little journey back in time to uncover this hidden 100-year-old story that basically decides whether you love your job or, feel like just another number.
Have you ever really thought about it? Why are some companies just awesome places to work? I mean, you can feel the energy, the creativity. There's a real sense of purpose.
And then there are the other places, the ones that make you feel like you're just a cog in some giant impersonal machine. So what is the deal? What makes these experiences so completely different?
Well, the answer is actually hiding in plain sight, in a story that's more than a century old. This diagram right here, this progression of management viewpoints, this is going to be our map. It shows how our ideas about work have changed over time, and it holds the key to understanding the DNA of pretty much any company out there today.
Okay, so our story begins with the efficiency revolution. Basically, how we started building the machine.
Our first stop on the map is right here in this first column, the classical viewpoint. You got to remember, this was born out of the total chaos of the Industrial Revolution, and it was all about one thing, and one thing only: finding a way to make work more rational and a whole lot more efficient.
And what's super interesting is how they tackle this problem from two totally different directions. On one side, you had scientific management, which was laser-focused on perfecting the individual task, and then at the same time, you had administrative management, which zoomed way out to figure out how to structure the entire organization.
Scientific management was completely obsessed with finding the one best way to do any job. Seriously, think of it like a recipe. The guy who pioneered it, Frederick Taylor, he believed you could scientifically study every single movement to create the absolute perfect, most productive recipe for any task.
And believe it or not, you can still see the ghosts of these ideas all around us. Taylor's old stopwatch studies? They're the great-great-grandparents of the super-efficient systems you see in every Amazon fulfillment center or in the kitchen of any fast food place. The goal is identical: get the most output with the least amount of waste.
But there was a massive human-sized problem with all this. At its heart, this way of thinking was just too mechanistic. It treated people like they were interchangeable parts in a machine, totally ignoring their feelings, their ideas, their basic humanity. And that huge flaw, it set the stage for a revolution.
And that flaw led us straight into our next chapter, the human revolution, or as I like to call it, the realizing people aren't machines era. So our next stop on the map is the behavioral viewpoint. And this was a huge pendulum swing away from the cold, hard logic of that classical era. The focus shifted dramatically from all the processes and tasks to the actual people and their behavior.
You had pioneers like Mary Parker Follett arguing for a completely different way of doing things. Her idea that organizations should be run like communities, where managers and employees actually work together, that was absolutely radical for the time. She saw workplaces as social systems, not just production lines.
And this whole shift is captured perfectly in Douglas McGregor's Theory X versus Theory Y. Theory X is that old-school, classical cog view. Workers are basically lazy and you have to control them. But Theory Y, that's the new community view. People are creative, they're self-motivated, and they want to contribute. Now think about a manager you've had. Which theory do you think they subscribe to? It changes everything, doesn't it?
Okay, so we've gone from looking at companies as machines to looking at the people inside them. But the world kept getting way more complex. And that brings us to the modern toolkit, where we start adding data, systems, and strategy to the mix.
So now we're adding even more tools to the manager's toolkit. As you can see back on our map, this includes the quantitative, the systems, and the contingency viewpoints. Now think of these not as replacements for the old ideas, but as powerful new layers built right on top of everything that came before.
All right, first up, the quantitative viewpoint. This is all about applying math and stats to management. And really, the easiest way to get it is just to think Moneyball, but for business. It's all about using hard data and computer simulations to make way smarter decisions.
Then you've got the systems viewpoint, which is a real game changer. It stops seeing the company as a machine and starts seeing it as a living, breathing ecosystem. Every single department is connected. A decision over in marketing sends ripples through sales and production. You literally cannot touch one part without affecting the whole thing.
And finally, we get to the contingency viewpoint, which is just pure modern-day pragmatism. It completely throws out that old idea of a single best way to manage anything. Instead, it says the right approach depends entirely on the situation, on the people, and on the problem you're trying to solve. In other words, it's the ultimate it depends theory of management.
So, why does any of this 100-year-old history lesson actually matter to you right now? Because we can use all of it to our advantage. We can actually learn how to read a company's DNA.
See, understanding this whole evolution gives you a really powerful lens. Before you even think about joining a new company, you can basically become a corporate detective. You can start to decode its real management style just by looking at its mission, its values, its history, and who its leaders are.
So you can ask yourself, is this company run like a finely tuned machine? That's a throwback to that old classical viewpoint. Or is it more like a community, which tells you it's rooted in the behavioral school? Or maybe it's a dynamic ecosystem, which shows a more modern systems approach. Each one of those is going to feel totally different to work inside.
And that, right there, is the real takeaway. Knowing all this history isn't just some academic exercise. It's a practical tool to help you find a place where you don't just fit in, but where you can actually truly thrive.
I mean, we've traced this incredible journey, from treating people like cogs in a machine to building collaborative communities. It just makes you wonder, what's the next great management idea that's going to shape all the workplaces of the future?